Well, hello there. This is Dennis James with Various Insurance Planning, ensuring your well-being. I am the bike and dance and insurance man, and today we are going to have an excellent topic with two experts in the yoga field. And if you know anything about yoga, it's one of the best wellness programs that is available. And we're going to be talking with Samantha and Dena and with Yoga Onyx out of where living is a vacation. It's called Lake Orion, Michigan. And anyhow, I think you're going to learn a lot. And you're also going to be seeing a instructional video also. All right. So both Dena and Samantha was able to put that together. And so not only are you going to learn the basics and know about these two ladies, you're also going to be able to practice if you want. And then what you'd want to do is figure out how you can get one of their classes, something like that, or somewhere, wherever you are. Let's start with Samantha. Samantha, go ahead. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and let's go from there.
Yeah, so my name is Samantha. I became a yoga instructor in 2019. I had only been practicing yoga at that time for about a year after I had some personal traumatic stuff occur in my life, and yoga came at a time that it just ended up being incredibly healing for me. I started off with what's called Ashtanga yoga, and I'm sure we'll talk about that more in a little bit. And it's just a very rigid practice, and it just created a lot of discipline and a lot of healing for me at a time that I really needed it.
Okay.
And then I ended up taking my teacher training in 2019, and primarily, not only because I thought it was so healing for myself, but I also am a mental health therapist, and I thought it would be really great to mirror the two or bring the two together, the yoga world and the mental health world. So I wanted to combine both of them. So I took my teacher training program, and then I still wanted to learn more. So I did another teacher training program virtually in 2020, 2021, somewhere during the COVID times. And I did a lot of accessibility to yoga. Specifically, my training was focused on accessibility to inversions and arm balances. So just trying to invite people a sense of play, a sense of adventure. And it was a lot of free-flowing yoga, too. So I went from this Ashtanga rigid background to how can I do a free-flowing type of yoga and just experiment and explore what's happening in my body and invite other people to do that, too. So yeah, that's a little bit about my yoga background. My personal life, I'm married. I just had a baby. I was just telling Dennis and Dena here, this is my first hour away from my baby. He's just in the lobby with my mom, so he's not too far away. Yeah, so, and my husband and I, we have a couple of rental properties. We watch dogs. We like to travel a lot. So I have a very full, fun, adventurous life.
Yes, you do. And you're also an owner with
That's probably,
Yoga
yeah,
Onyx.
yes. So skipped right over that part. I also co-own Yoga Onyx, yes. It's located on Baldwin. I just joined a partnership with the other owner. Her name is Lindsay. We started partnering in August of this past year. So that's also very new and very fresh. So lots of newness here.
All right. And then we have Dena.
Hi,
And your last name is?
Bostwick.
Okay. You want to go ahead and tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah, so the practice of yoga has been such a journey for me of healing and self-reflection. I've been practicing for about 15 years. It wasn't until recently that I felt really called to do teacher training. I took my first teacher training in 2023 in Bloomfield at Lifetime. And I started teaching. I have this just yearning to learn and continue to learn, go deeper into the practice, not just the poses, but also philosophy. And I took my 300 hour in Thailand with Jonah Kest in June. And since then, I've just continued to teach as much as I can, practice as much as I can. And I just want to continue learning more about philosophy and just sharing this practice with others. That's helped me so much throughout my entire life.
And I believe you are married also with children.
Yes, I'm married. I have 2 children.
Okay.
Yes, so they keep me very busy.
Wow. Yeah. That's pretty cool where you can juggle it all, right?
Yeah, it's
And
definitely a lot.
you're actually going to be creating some future yogis.
Yes, absolutely.
Get them to step into the world of yoga. You know, it's interesting just for myself. I mean, when I met my wife, Sue, right, and I think I might have shared it with you, you know, we did a yoga class and a meditation class, right? And it was all happening in the same week, and it was just incredible at times. And what I have really believed that honestly, everybody should do yoga, and I don't think there should ever be a reason, you know, why you can't. I know when I got into it, just for the flexibility, I don't need to tell you both that, but, you know, I think a lot of men, especially, you know, I feel like they're a little shy about that, you know, but if you want to learn to relax and stretch and have flexibility, you're going to lose it if you don't do it. Right. And so what I have realized just by me going in and not worrying about what everybody else is doing is just doing my part. Right, doing what works for me. And I've realized through the years, too, I can't do what I used to do, but it doesn't matter because just being able to do it, you know, like with the breathing and all that, and I know we're going to talk more into that. So I really have to celebrate for women that are really in that field and doing it because it's so important. I mean, because of everything it does, not only with physically, but mentally and the breathing. We know whatever we do in our world of living, that the breathing is so important. So anyhow, I wanted to ask you what RYT 500 means, because you both have it. And what's that mean?
It means registered yoga teacher. So there's an organization called Yoga Alliance that it kind of is just a way to get certified as a yoga teacher. And the 500 represents 500 hours of learning.
Okay.
Yeah. So when I say that, when we both had mentioned we had done 2 different trainings, that first training was for 200 hours and the second training was for the additional 300. Is that how your program was too, Dena?
Correct.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then right down to the simplicity, right? We want to always talk about basics, and you know, a lot of people, I'm sure they've heard about yoga, right? It seems like everybody in this world should, but what is yoga?
So the word yoga means union. That's the translation of it. And so the way that I like to invite people to think about it is this union of self, this union of connecting with who you are and the divine, however you want to define that for your personal life. But it's your connection to the self is, I think, is the best way I like to describe it. What would you say, Dena?
I agree with you. Just bringing awareness inward, silencing all external distractions and focusing on what's happening internally.
Right. A lot of times there's soft music that goes to it, right? Some type of flow music. Is that pretty much for all classes or not?
So as far let me just to
go on.
Just to back up slightly, you know, when I say the word yoga means union, and I say that it's this connection to the self. We can talk about this a little bit more later as well, but there's a practice off of the mat too. So it's not just going into a room and putting yourself into crazy poses or learning how to do a handstand. I mean, those are very fun and it can be great, but there is also this huge like mental component too. So it's not only a physical practice, it's also a mental one and a spiritual one as well. But to your question about the music of is there always music? The answer is no. And traditionally, yoga wasn't practiced with music. I actually think that's more of a Western thing that we've done and brought into classes. But traditionally, yoga was just practice and silence of just listening to your breath. The breath is the music. And meditating in that sense, and when I say meditating, I mean choosing a point of focus to just focus your attention on, focus your awareness on. And the breath is one of the, I like to say, simple, not easy things to do is focus on your breathing.
Right. And talking about breathing, why don't you talk a little bit about that? I'd like to hear your perspective and then Dena's when it comes to breathing.
Yeah. So most of us have a shallow breath. When I say shallow breath, I mean breathing into the chest or breathing from the chest rather than breathing into the low belly. And when you breathe into the low belly or try to direct the breath like lower into the body, that actually activates what's called the parasympathetic nervous system. That's the part of the body that's responsible for rest and digest, is what I like to say. Versus that chest breathing, that shallow breathing, is what's responsible for your fight or flight, which is super helpful if you're, running from a tiger in the jungle, but we're not doing that most of the time, at least in our world today. But when most of us are living in that state, we're living in this fight or flight response all the time. And so if you draw your attention inward and focus on the breathing and breathing into the low belly, that activates that calming response. And doing so builds up this sense of resiliency, so that when someone cuts you off in traffic, you're less likely to flip them off, let's say. Or when you get in an argument with your spouse, you're able to just connect to your breath and just take that exhale, take that moment to be centered with yourself, so that you can have a conversation with someone instead of being emotionally reactive to those around us.
Yeah, more of a response versus reaction.
Yes, exactly.
Dena?
Yeah, I love what you said, Samantha. One thing just to add to that is that for many of us, we spend most of our lives focusing on our thoughts, and that creates suffering. So this overthinking, toggling back and forth between present and future, and it's overwhelming. We forget about the present and the beauty of that. Yeah. When we can bring our awareness to our breath and deepening it and expanding, we're able to connect with ourselves, with the present moment, and where life truly exists.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Where it's so nice and quiet, and
Yes.
the lights are down, and you're trying to listen to your instructor and all those other things, but really working on the breathing and just being. Just being is really the word.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I know it's.
Yeah, we spend so much of our time doing rather than being. And the breath is that point of focus to be in a place of being, of just existing in, like you said, Dena, the present moment, rather than, I like to say anxiety is in the future and depression is in the past. So when you're focused on the past, you're more likely to have these regretful thoughts, or I wish I would have done this, or I wish I could have done that, or said this. And when you're thinking about the future, I could do this and I might do this, and there's all this worry. And so in the present, when you're focused on the breath, that brings a sense of peace.
Mm-hmm. Okay, you know what we're going to do now? Let's go ahead and watch that instructional video. All right,
Okay.
because I know it was really outstanding how you went through and you really broke things down from standing, with posture and all that, and then you went into posture from different poses. And then we also, you both demonstrated and talked about the breathing a little bit, all right? So let's go ahead and do that right at this present moment. Let me click that. Ready? Well, here we are today. We have two experts at Yoga Onyx in Lake Orion, Michigan. We're living as a vacation, and they're going to be demonstrating the basics of yoga and all the wellness benefits of it. First of all, we have Samantha and Dena. And so you're going to really enjoy this. The whole idea is to understand the value and the benefits of yoga no matter what age you are at. And so go ahead, Samantha, I want you to kind of lead this, you and Dee together, and let's make this happen.
Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is just take Dena through a couple of basic yoga movements from a sun salutation. So sun salutation is something that is practiced in a lot of different styles of yoga. It's in basic yoga, it can be in a vinyasa class, in a slow flow, in a hatha, ashtanga. So there's all these different types of yoga classes you can take. And a sun salutation is kind of often the foundation of these different styles. So I'm going to have Dena start standing at the top of the mat. And I'm going to take her through two different ways of basic yoga, let's say, or beginner style yoga. So she's standing at the top of the mat, and Dena, why don't you widen your feet a little bit so that they're about as wide as your hips. So this is just a little bit more of a stable foundation and can be a little bit more comfortable for the spine as well. The arms are just extended down to the sides, and the crown of the head, when I say crown of the head and then the top of her head, is just reaching up towards the ceiling. So she's just in a standing posture. And on your next inhale, Dena, let's just notice the breath first, because this is the foundation, right? Is this connection, the breath and the movement coming together, especially in sun salutation. So Dena, just notice your breath inside the nose and along the upper lip. And on the next inhale, just reach the arms up towards the ceiling. And no worry, you don't need to let the palms touch. Yes, exactly. And the fingertips can be spread wide. So she's just extending her arms up here. As you exhale, Dena, just forward fold. Bring your hands towards the earth. And then on the inhale, let's come all the way back up to standing. As you exhale, place your hands back to the sides. Standing position. So this is a modified, a half sun salutation is what we often call it. Now if you want to take this a little bit further, also in the beginning poses here, or basic poses, the foundation is still the same. You're standing top of the mat. On your inhale, reach the arms up overhead. As you exhale, forward fold. On your inhale, it's a halfway lift. Press the hands into the thighs. Yeah, let's do that. So this is a little bit more accessible for a beginner posture. Her hands are pressing to the thighs and her crown of her is lengthening out towards the horizon. As you exhale, forward fold once again and step back to a tabletop position. So she's just coming down into her hands and knees. And her knees are underneath her hips, her hands are underneath her shoulders. As you inhale, come into a cow position, so extending or arching through the spine, your gaze is lifted. As you exhale, round through the spine, create more of a cat-like posture, tuck the chin to the chest. Let's do one more inhale through a cow position. And as you exhale, child's pose. Press the hips back towards the heels, widening the knees, and her belly can just sink through the thighs. So she can just stay here, and this can be the end of the sun salutation or the end of the yoga practice.
My favorite pose.
Yeah, it's a nice resting posture here. And even as she's in this position, her hips are just pressing back towards the heels, her arms are extending out, just finding a sense of length throughout the spine as her belly is just falling in between the thighs. On the inhale, you can come back up towards the tabletop position. And then just take an exhale here, and let's try to come back to that standing halfway lift. So this is a little bit of a tricky transition. So just bring one foot up towards the top of the mat, and then just step the other foot as well. And halfway lift, hands pressing into the thighs. Beautiful. Exhale, back to that forward fold. And on the inhale, all the way up to standing, reaching the arms up overhead. And exhale, hands come back down to the sides. So this is a nice little introduction for that sun salutation. I'm going to go ahead and keep going through.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Cool. So if you want to up this a little bit or take it a step further, here's a way that you would do that. Inhale, arms reach up. Same thing, hands are just extending up towards the ceiling. As you exhale, forward fold. So you see this part's the same. And inhale the halfway lift, press the hands into the shins. So you can see Dena has the mobility to do this. So she doesn't have to come all into the thighs, she can just press her hands into the shins. As you exhale, plant the hands and step the feet back to your top of a push-up. And drop down onto your knees. Yes. Take an inhale here. And then as you exhale, lower down all the way to the belly. Let's come all the way to the belly. Yes. Inhale, a cobra pose, lifting the chest. Yes, beautiful. So her thighs are still resting. And even if she wanted, she doesn't have to do it this extent, this arch. You can come down a little bit lower, Dena. Yeah, so it even could be this high. Just some sort of a little bit of a back bend. And then on the exhale, downward facing dog. So she's tucking the toes, her hips are pressing back and up, and she's making this upside down V shape. Dena, go ahead and come off of the heels. So just come onto the toes and bend into the knees and sink up. So for some people, this might be a downward facing dog. So Dena has a lot of mobility here, so she's able to do the full expression of it. But for some of us, this might not be what our downward facing dog looks like. So notice how there's a lot of length throughout her spine. She's pressing her hands down into the mat. And even though her knees are bent, and even though she's on the toes, she's still energetically pressing her heels down towards the mat. So traditionally, we would stay here for 5 breaths. After those 5 breaths, on the inhale, Dena, come back to that halfway lift to the top of the mat. Pressing the hands into the shins. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale brings you all the way up to standing, reaching the arms. And exhale, hands back down to the sides. Beautiful. One step further, the full expression, let's call it, of the sun salutation A. So notice how at the beginning Dena's feet were further apart. Now her toes and heels are touching or together. On the inhale, arms reach up overhead, bring the palms to touch. So this can be intense for a lot of people's shoulder mobility. But again, Dena has it, so she can do it. On the exhale, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift, keep the hands on the ground this time. Again, she has that range of mobility to keep her fingertips here. Exhale, plant the hands, step the feet to the back of the mat, you're top of a push-up. Same exhale this time, you're gonna lower down towards chaturanga. Keep the elbows in towards the side, 1 inch off the mat. So a lot of strength building here. Inhale, upward facing, lifting the chest. This time she's gonna press into the tops of the feet, so her thighs are lifting as well. So there's space right here. Exhale, downward facing dog. So now you see Dena pressing her heels back towards the earth, and then they're touching the ground here now as she's doing this. 5 breaths traditionally. Inhale, top of the mat, back to that halfway lift. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale brings you all the way up to standing, reaching your arms, palms touch. And exhale, hands come down to the sides. Now, as you notice, I took her through these 3 different kinds of sun salutations. And they're supposed to be accessible for all different stages, right? No matter how old you are, no matter what your range of mobility is, there's something for everyone. There's something that you can do, and there's always a little bit more to be pushing yourself or to go a little extra to gain that sense of strength, to gain that sense of mobility. And even when she's in that cat-cow position, Dena, come down to the cat-cow real quick, tabletop cat-cow. Even when she's here in what I was referring to as a beginner posture, I mean, there's still a lot of strength happening here as she's using her arms, her hands to press down and it's strengthening through her shoulders. Create a flat tabletop, so draw the belly, not a cat, flatten here. Yes, there you go, and then draw belly up here. So this is like a flat tabletop position, and this is still a lot of strength building through her shoulders. So this is still accessible. Like if you're able to get onto the hands and knees, like this is a great beginning posture. Even just moving through cats and cows. Let's go ahead and show that one more time. Inhale for a cow. So there's this full extension here of the spine, and then an exhale for a cat, tucking the tail under, rounding through the spine. It creates so much mobility throughout this whole entire backside of the body. All right, thank you, Dena. So those are just 3 different ways to access yoga through sun salutations.
Okay, that was wonderful. I thought you both did a fabulous job. Great information. I think breathing is so important, right? And can you just talk briefly about that?
Yes.
And then we'll wrap it up here.
Yeah. So the breathing is the most important thing. Like if you just lay down on your back for an entire hour and just focus on breathing, that's yoga. Like that's all you have to really be doing is just focusing on the breath. So make sure, Dena, if you come to a seated posture, and let's say you face the camera. If you're okay with that. Okay. So just in this position here, I'm going to talk about what's called diaphragmatic breathing. So that's breathing in 6 different directions. We can breathe up and down, side to side, and front and back. And so that's what we're trying to access when we're practicing yoga at all times, really. So, Dena, why don't you place your hands onto your belly? I'm actually going to do this with you. Why don't we, yeah, because I can do this with you. So let's just do this together. So have the hands onto the belly. And if for anyone that's viewing this video, if you want to join us as well, just practice this, you're welcome to do that too. So placing the hands onto the belly and just noticing your breath at first. If it feels okay to close the eyes, if that feels comfortable for you, you might close the eyes. And just noticing, do you feel any movement in the belly? And maybe you don't, and that's okay. It might feel a little bit easier to even place one hand onto the chest, one hand onto the belly, and noticing, am I breathing into my chest, or am I breathing into my belly? What part of the body is moving? And see if you can start to direct the breath into the low belly. So as you inhale, you start to fill the belly all the way up. And as you exhale, the belly starts to lower or draw in. If you have one hand on the chest, go ahead and place it onto the belly or to the sides of the belly. And just trying to breathe down. Inhale, the belly is filling all the way up. So you're finding this down all the way to the pelvic floor. And then as you exhale, allowing it to come out completely, the belly kind of draws in. If this is challenging, you can also place the hands to the sides or even to your rib cage. And then you might breathe side to side. So what I mean by that is as you're taking that inhale, try breathing into the hands, into the sides of the rib cage, filling that space all the way up. And as you exhale, you might kind of notice the rib cage draws in. So this is this diaphragmatic breathing. You're breathing front and back,
Or you even can place one hand onto the low back, one hand onto the belly, same kind of thing. Try breathing into the low back. We're trying to direct the breath down, out, and forward and back. And you might notice one of those things might be a little bit easier or harder than another, so just focusing on that one part. Just breathe into the low belly. It might cause some emotions to arise. It might be a little anxiety provoking at first too. That is totally normal. And it's because the body's just not really used to doing that. It's not something that we're usually comfortable with. Usually we're breathing from the chest so often. We're in this fight or flight state. And so breathing deeply, it activates what's called the parasympathetic nervous system. That's our rest and digest, slowing down. So it's a nice, easy, I don't know if I should say easy, simplest maybe way, because I don't think breathing is necessarily easy all the time. But simplest way to start your yoga practice is just by breathing into the belly.
All right, that turned out really good. You ladies, that was great instruction. I'm sure everybody's going to enjoy that, and they're going to put that into practice, right?
Yeah, awesome.
So, let's talk a little bit about more ages, tell me when you think the right time is and when there's maybe not a right time. I'm not sure if there's ever not a right time, but maybe there is.
Yeah, I think I would argue that now is the time, right now, for anyone, for any age. Even like you mentioned earlier before we started this podcast, are building up future yogis, or maybe you said this in the podcast, building up the future yogis, I guess. Like our babies can be practicing yoga, or we could be doing it with them. So from infancy all the way until like you're on your deathbed, like practicing yoga is accessible to all ages just by utilizing the breath. Just that part alone, breathing is practicing yoga. As far as those physical postures, as we went through in the video, we kind of went through a more beginner postures, intermediate, and advanced. And even the beginner, we could even break down that even more. You can practice yoga sitting down in your chair. Yeah. It doesn't have to be standing on your mat in a classroom, although that is, what we demonstrated. But it's accessible for everyone to be able to practice.
Absolutely. Any thoughts on that, Dena?
Yeah, I agree. I always tell my students, especially if they're newer and they say, I'm not flexible, I can't do yoga. And I just say, if you can breathe, you can do yoga. Yeah. That's really all it is.
Yeah. It's interesting. You said lifetime. Sue and I and myself, we through the years, right, have went through different, studios and, practicing yoga and lifetime. You mentioned lifetime, and it's interesting because Kelly actually works at your studio, and I have taken some of her classes, and she's I'm sure all your instructors are amazing, for sure.
I like to think so.
And yeah.
I'm a little biased.
Yeah. But that lifetime, and just doing the different types, and also there's Roz there that has been around forever. I think, I don't know if you know her or not.
That's my mentor.
She's kind of been a leader in the field, I know. And so why don't we talk a little more on the different types of yoga. Let's go ahead and do that.
So there's a lot of different types. There's Ashtanga yoga is the one I'm going to start with, only because that's the one that we kind of introduced in the video, and I mentioned that that's part of my background. So Ashtanga first started in Mysore, India. I think it was 1948 when Patabi Joyce first started the Ashtanga practice, and it's the same anywhere in the world. So any studio you go into and you practice Ashtanga, you're going to experience the exact same sequence, the exact same poses. So the first 10-15 minutes it's one breath, one movement. So when I say that, I mean inhale, you're raising your arms up. Exhale, your arms are coming down. So one breath, one movement for the first 10-15 minutes, and then you're holding poses for 5 breaths for the rest of the practice. There's a standing sequence in there, there's a seated sequence, and then there's a finishing sequence. Now, most studios practice what's known as short form Ashtanga. So you're not getting the full extent of the practice. The standing will likely be the same in any studio, but the seated poses, the instructor is probably going to kind of pick and choose which poses to do in that short form. Short form is usually 60 minutes. The full practice takes anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours, just kind of depends on the student and the teacher. So that Ashtanga is one style, and then there's slow flow and vinyasa that I'm gonna kind of break down a little bit here. They're a little bit more free flowing, let's say. So you'll start in slow restorative postures, and you'll build up slowly as you're going, so that the class will start to get more and more heated. Slow flow is slower than vinyasa. Vinyasa means victorious breath is the translation, and that's always practiced that one breath, one movement. So it's faster. It's more dynamic. It's probably a good word for it. Whereas the slow flow is, again, slower, for lack of a better word. And then there's also yin yoga that focuses on the connective tissue. So these other postures that I was just referring to are focused on the muscles. Yin yoga is focused on the connective tissue. So your tendons, your ligaments, and you're on the floor the whole time, and you're holding poses for anywhere from 3 to 10 minutes.
Yes.
Sometimes.
That's the one
It's your favorite, right?
Well, I think they're all good, but I catch myself going in them, right? Which is good because it disciplines me to stay in those poses longer and really work hard on breathing to relax, right? That's the bottom line,
Yeah,
but
that one really challenges the mind for sure, because you're in a one pose for so long.
Yeah.
Um,
Go on.
There's other ones. Dina, do you kind of want to take over it all?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So other forms, there's like a hatha form, or a basic yoga, sometimes it can be called, which is just a gentler form of yoga, a more of an introductory form to yoga. And then there's styles that people will combine. So like at our studio, we offer something called Vin-Yin. So the first half of the class, you'll be doing vinyasa. The second half of the class, you'll be doing yin. So a little bit of both worlds. There's also something called Yoga Sculpt, where teachers bring in weights. So you're doing yoga with weights. It's actually a class that we just started introducing at our studio this week. Another one we actually just introduced this week too is called Holy Yoga, which is a Christian yoga. So it's practicing yoga with worship music and scripture and prayer. So a little bit different style.
What about, have you brought any sheep in?
Not yet, actually. Not yet. It is something.
That's a big deal in Detroit, man.
Yeah. So the animal yoga for sure is actually something I'm starting to look into a little bit. So stay tuned. Hopefully you'll see something with that with us in the future.
Yeah, right. Outside.
You're right. It's very it's fun. You don't really end up doing yoga, to be honest, when animals are around. You just end up playing with the animals, but it is a fun experience. There was another style I was going. Oh, yeah, and there's also, trauma-informed, again, we just introduced 3 new classes to our studio this week, so it's kind of a big week for us.
What's it called?
Trauma-informed. We're calling it Inner Calm. We have a yoga therapist on staff. Okay. So when I say yoga therapist, she's trained in not just like with mental health, but also with physical as well. Mm-hmm. So her whole class is centered around being trauma-sensitive. To individuals, so you'll get a little bit of a different experience going into a class like that.
I know some places have hot yoga. I actually did one at Lifetime. Yeah, it was interesting.
Often hot yoga is practiced with like a vinyasa style class. Most classes, at least in our studio, we have them anywhere between 75 and 90. It just depends. Right. Vinyasa is probably going to be 90. Yeah. The slow flow is going to be closer to 75, 80.
Yeah, what I realized there, and it really helped me because it gets hot in there, but because of me going out biking in hot weather, that was my advantage. Maybe the disadvantage was all the superstars that were in there, because it was flowing a lot too, so. But I definitely enjoyed that, and I think that definitely has a place for probably people that have at least intermediate. They'd have to be intermediate or advanced, yes, no?
It's more about your tolerance to the heat, I would say, than anything, because there's some people who can't really tolerate being in the heat for too long.
I'm with you. Yeah.
Yeah, and it also makes a difference of, so at our studio we have infrared heat, which is a little bit different than like regular heat. It doesn't feel like a hot fan blowing on you. It just feels like a warm space. So when I say 75, 80 with infrared panels is a little bit different than when you're turning on 75, 80 in your house.
Right, sure.
And
any thoughts, Dina? What's just on what we talked about, the different styles of yoga and
Yeah, I just wanted to mention with the vinyasa practice, I think that's what you were referring to, that you did hot yoga. Um, it can be intimidating at first. Like you
Yeah.
said, you look around and you
Right.
see maybe very experienced students.
Yeah.
But it can be very liberating to,
Mhm.
and we all have to start somewhere. I
Right.
remember
Yeah.
trying to remember the sequence, and it was overwhelming. So many times I was like, I'll just take child's pose and regroup.
That's a great
But one
pose.
of the things, yes, and it's available anywhere, right? Anytime. But one of the benefits about a vinyasa style, and even in the slow flow, when we encourage students to kind of use the template that we've cued, but then take it in your own hands,
Yeah.
there's actually a lot of health benefits with that as far as preventing Alzheimer's.
Huh? I
Um,
love that.
yeah, when we're using both hemispheres of the brain, moving from the
Wow.
front of the mat to the back,
Wow.
and also expanding the neuroplasticity in our brain. So oftentimes we think when we get to a certain age, we can't expand. But really, we can. And the more we show up on our mat and we use the templates and kind of flow on our own, it does encourage that.
For sure. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. 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 Being in the insurance profession, right, around the whole long-term care insurance thing, right, that whole cognitive thing, but there's so many ways of preventing it. There
Yes.
really is.
Yes.
They're finding more and more evidence. Nutrition,
Mm-hmm.
all the social is such a big deal for
Yeah.
everyone,
Sure.
and it plays a major role. And all right,
Let me just touch one more thing on
Yeah.
what kind of Dina was talking
And
about with the
do that, and let's not forget about the chair yoga.
yes.
But go ahead.
Yes. Okay.
Go ahead.
Gina had mentioned like the intimidation piece of seeing people flow on your own.
Right.
I wanted to kind of touch on that flow on your own piece because that's actually pretty unique to Metro Detroit area.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually Johnny Kess, who Dina mentioned, she trained with Jonah Kess, which is that Johnny's son?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So Johnny Kess, who he brought that Detroit style vinyasa is often what it's called. So if you practice vinyasa other places, it's not going to be flow on your own. It's more likely to be guided with an instructor. So when I say flow on your own, the teacher will teach you like some sequences or some poses to link together, and then they'll say, okay, take the flow on your own. And Dina also mentioned that liberating piece and intimidating piece, right? So on one hand, you're like, oh gosh, what if I forget? But the freedom with that is that it's okay if you forget. It's now your practice, and move however you want to move. Move in any way that feels good to you. So like Dina said, again, sometimes people just might want to go down to child's pose. Some people might
Right.
add in a
Right.
handstand.
Yeah.
That's not in everyone's practice.
Right.
Like so,
Right.
it's very freeing to be like, yeah, take this
Right.
and move in any way
Right.
that feels good to you, which kind of actually lines up with dance a little bit. It feels very dance-like
Right.
when you
Yeah.
take that kind of style.
Right. And then chair yoga,
Yes.
and then we'll be wrapping it up here soon. But go ahead, let's talk about that. And then go on.
Yeah. So chair yoga is exactly what it sounds like. It's doing yoga in your chair. So you could be in a seated position. Oftentimes, instructors will have you bring a strap, or they'll provide you with a strap so that you can do some stuff focusing on the legs too, like taking the strap around the bottom of the foot as an example. Or it'll be more like upper body movements of just like raising the arms up, taking twisting motions. So it's a little bit gentler, and it's great for anyone who can't get down on the floor.
Right. Nice. I like that. Yeah, it was interesting when I was over at Lifetime, after they had the Aurora dance class, right? They actually came in and they ran about a 20-minute on the chair yoga, and I thought it was pretty cool. I mean, even myself, I'm not ready to step into that. I probably could and should, but, I was very, not doing that, but it was great for me to get to experience that because, you can still get into some pretty good poses with that. It's just the way, you got the chair there, but if you don't really want to put any tension on the chair, you don't need to.
Right.
Right. And and it goes through the same thing that everyone's doing, right? They're working on their breathing and all that. And if you're listening to your instructor and just doing your part, right? Not worrying about what everyone else is doing.
Yeah, that's a huge piece. A lot of times people start to look around the room and try to watch what everyone else is doing, but yoga is about, again, the self. It's just
Yeah.
focusing what's going on in my body today. Like I like to say I can't be in your body, I can only be in my body. Right? So what's going on with you today? What do you need in this practice?
Right. What about practicing on the mat? And then we're gonna finish up here. But go ahead. Just, talk about that.
Yeah, so this time that we come into the studio, 60 minutes or whatever it is it's kind of like when you take your vehicle to the auto shop, you get realigned, you take a tune-up, but a vehicle isn't meant to stay there. It's meant to go out and do its thing. It's kind of like with us, we come to the studio in that sacred space on our mat, but the practice begins basically when we roll up our mat. How do we move through life? What is our posture like? Are we, shrugging our shoulders and shallow breathing? Are we, connecting with others with empathy? Or, yoga really is always. It's not just when we're in the studio or on our mats.
I like that, right? You take it out into the real world, right?
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. Wow, what great information. This was motivating and inspiring.
Cool.
All right, so people may have questions, right? And so they may call you or want to contact you. So Samantha, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and tell them, how they could reach you and where your studio is located, because people that are within, the community.
Yeah. So again, the studio's name is Yoga Onyx. We are located on Baldwin. We are just north of I-75, or just north of Brown Road, just south of Maybe. And the best way to reach us is probably by email, yogaonyx1@gmail.net. We are gmail.com. We are in the process of working on a new website right now. Our website is also yogaonyx.net. Those are probably the best ways to get a hold of us. And you can always drop into the studio too. The first class is free. Okay. We also have a new student special for unlimited yoga for $59 a month. Or you can do a drop-in for $20 if you just want to do a one-time drop-in and you've already visited before.
All right, very cool. Dena, anything you'd like to say there?
Yeah, I'm just grateful to be a part of Yoga Onyx. It's a really special studio. So many great teachers, and the place is very unique and welcoming.
Right.
So, yeah, I hope everyone will come check us out.
For sure. Yes, I would definitely check out Yoga Onyx. That always makes sense. You could tell just listening to the podcast here that we do have experts here that really want to make a difference in your life, right? Don't be shy about it. Just like they said, you can go in for a free class and, you go from there. Wherever you are in this world, make it happen and try yoga. Why not, right? If Dennis James, the bike and dance and insurance man, can do it, you can do it. With that being said, thank you both for being here. I want everybody to go out there and make it happen and have a blessed day. God bless.